Hey everybody, welcome back. Hollywood Pizza here. Hope you've been keeping it cheesy. We've got some exciting tournament coverage for you today. From May 22nd's Pizza Box Open Standard, we've got John Likes Games and Hamhocks42 on the commentary. Don't forget, you can find all their content and any information about the Pizza Box's tournaments monthly in the description down below, and I hope you enjoy the video.
Oftentimes we all know, and I mean, the debate is raged on with new players, but it's settled for, professional players and that looting is always good. So you discard a good card. Who cares, right? You're going to keep the better card. And unless you have literally the best cards in your hand currently that are in your deck, you should always loot, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Except that's just regular looting. In this case, if you're discarding a good card, like, man, I wish I could keep this, but I can't, you get a 1/1 counter. You're adding to the board. You normally have to pay mana to add power and toughness to the board somehow. Not exclusively true, obviously, but oftentimes if you're gonna get +1/+1 on a creature, you've got to pay for it. Okay.
Yeah.
You're not. You're discarding the worst of these couple of cards that you have access to. It's just so powerful.
Right? Yeah, it's insane. And the fact that triggers on attack. Like there's so many other versions of it. Like Ledger Shredder is a great example of a great card that's seeing a ton of play across a bunch of formats. And it triggers a connive one, mind you. Like, oh, you only loot once, but still worth it. Whenever a player, it could be you, could be your opponent, plays their second spell in a turn. So like that's a situation, especially in older formats, that occurs far more often than it does in, formats like standard, especially in a mid-range meta standard. But still, it's, that's still a powerful effect, even though it's only triggering once each turn maximum, and only when certain conditions are met. You also have cards like Body Launderer that triggers when another creature dies. It's like, okay, that's a situation, or another creature you control dies. So that's a situation in sacrifice decks where, okay, maybe there's an opportunity to get some kind of engine moving there. But with Rafine, you just slam it and attack, and you're golden.
Yeah.
There's no other creature that does something that efficiently. That certainly connives that efficiently.
Exactly. It looks like, folks, we are going to be getting into the top 8.
Yes.
Feeling good about that. Snowman, who we have seen play earlier, is off to the races. Had to take a mulligan, but that's okay. This hand looks pretty good. Needs to draw some lands, so don't betray me, deck, But slams Luminar Casper on 2, and it gets promptly exiled by Spikefield Hazard from Kendville, who is then going to play a tap land and pass it on back for turn 3. What are you looking for here, my friend?
Well, in this situation, Snowman is definitely looking for lands, which they did see there. Now, Kelvandil has just kind of the card advantage naturally because of the mulligan, so that's helpful here. And Spikefield Hazard was exactly what they needed there too, and they have another one. That's pretty great. Now, I hope that Kelvandil has other lands in hand, but being able to hit 2 Spikefield Hazards to answer 2 1/1 threats, one of which being a very good one in Luminar Casper, and then following that up with an Expressive Iteration on a turn when you haven't hit your land drop yet, that's golden, because they're going to be able to draw a card and hit their land drop, hopefully, if Expressive Iteration cooperates, which it looks like it will. And they still have 1 mana up, which could be any number of things. So
Sure.
that's golden.
So, we're into the top 8 here.
Yeah.
The chips are down. The players have earned their spots. Nobody's been given this here. Nobody's getting any buys or anything like that. They've all earned their seat. So pick one. If you were going to sit in a seat, Kelvandil's or Snowman's seat?
All right. I mean, at this moment, now we're only looking at game 1 here, and this is best of 3, so anything can happen. Kelvandil seems to have all the answers here, but I'm not seeing any threats. And it's not. And meanwhile, Snowman is sitting with a Wedding Announcement and a Wandering Emperor in hand, and a Tenacious Underdog in the graveyard. Now, the mana isn't quite cooperating to get the Tenacious Underdog going, but they have Wandering Emperor up, so that feels pretty good here. So I gotta say, I think Snowman has a slight edge here. Now, admittedly, I don't know what's in Kelvandil's hand, so there could be a Goldspan Dragon waiting to pop off here, which the Wandering Emperor would promptly shoot out of the sky. But I mean, there could be any number of things. It'll be interesting here to see if Kelvandil hits that rather important 5th land drop these days, especially having played 2 Spikefields.
Yeah, well, exactly. And, again, folks, you have to remember that this isn't the old days. Maybe you're not a brand new player, and we try and be as new player friendly as possible. Maybe you're an old fogey like him and I, and we're used to putting 26 lands in our mid range deck, and darn it,
Absolutely.
you'll like it. Well, a lot of these decks aren't putting 26 lands in; they're putting like, whatever, 23 or 24, and then several of these MDFCs. So when you use your land drop as a removal spell, that feels great, but it doesn't come free. As we
Right.
see here, it looks like Kelvandil is using their land drop again, but this time as a counter spell to take care of the Wandering Emperor. Brutal.
But still hitting 5 lands and an unexpected windfall. Notably, too, Kelvandil discarded a Show of Confidence. And that is meaningful because Show of Confidence is, the combo that Kelvandil is trying to assemble is Goldspan Dragon, a lot of cheap spells, and potentially some unexpected windfalls, big scores, etc. And follow it up with a Show of Confidence to make a gigantic Goldspan Dragon. And if they're lucky, Kazul's Fury it directly into their opponent's face. And so by discarding a Show of Confidence, that tells me Kelvandil probably has another one. And it's also interesting here, they played out the Goldspan Dragon, assuming there's no way they have a Wandering Emperor because we already got one. But we have yet another Modal Double Face card. MDFCs, as they're known.
All right, so back in my day, my land drop didn't remove 2 creatures, counter a spell, and give my creature protection. But all of those things have happened for Kelvandil here.
That's impressive. I mean, it's just, yeah, they don't have a white land on the battlefield, and they spent a white land to prevent their Goldspan Dragon from being exiled. But as well, the Goldspan Dragon became the target of an ability and a spell, and so 2 treasure tokens were created in the process. I mean, that was absolutely golden.
Looks like Infernal Grasp is going to show up.
And Kelvandil's had all the answers so far, so let's see, does that continue?
No.
Not right now, okay.
Okay, that is... I don't even think I'm gonna take the low-hanging fruit here, folks, and say that was really important because Snowman was going to die if the Goldspan Dragon stayed around too long. Now, admittedly, Snowman does have another Vanishing Verse to back it up, but darn it, as soon as Kelvandil has access to all of their mana and all of the cards in their hand and everything, there are even more answers that they could possibly have, right? So,
Absolutely.
My goodness.
I gotta say, John, that was a brilliant call. That was
Thank you. Thank you. I'm here to provide top
You're
tier
not wrong.
commentary.
I mean, it's 100% correct. Yeah. All right, now we're gonna have double Voltage Surge to pick off both these tokens because Snowman they had another wedding announcement in hand and they had the opportunity to play it out previously and decided to wait. I think that was smart, but now they don't have the Vanishing Verse up, although Kelvandil's now down to 1 card in hand. So
and what are the odds? Another wedding announcement. Good lord.
Yeah.
This reminds me, Ham.
Yes.
I know you've been playing for a long time.
A little bit, yeah.
Do you remember those good old days of, I don't know, there's been a couple of really nasty offenders, but like History of Benelia, where the first one was fine. It's a good card, and I liked it.
Yeah.
But when they have another one,
like, okay, I have to deal with this, but it's not the end of the world. Sure.
Yeah. The second one, though,
ooh,
that's where it got real. How about Siege Rhino?
Oh.
The first Siege Rhino, that was annoying. Darn it. The second Siege Rhino, you're like, I'm not even playing Magic anymore. That's the way wedding announcements feel when they keep stacking up. They keep making all these creatures. They keep flipping over and making all of your creatures larger. It feels like you're breaking the rules somehow.
Right.
Just repeatedly.
Well, and I talk a lot about like how I read a card first, and wedding announcement was one of those that I was sleeping on initially because I remember like, yeah, it creates a couple tokens. You get a Glorious Anthem at the end. Glorious Anthem is a 3-mana ability. Sure, it's not bad. Like, it's okay. But just like you're saying, when you have multiple of them online, the idea of, I mean, right now, 1 is flipped and 2 aren't, and they just casually produce 2 2/2s. And then next turn, if those 2/2s attack, it's going to draw you 2 cards. I mean, that's real. That's value right there.
That's back in my day. Right? Glorious Anthem cost 3 mana, and Divination cost 3 mana. So I'm just saying, I'm not very good at math, but it isn't adding up. There's too much. There's just
Right?
too much.
All right, this is a Tenacious Underdog coming out of the hand, which is casually because of that Glorious Anthem effect of 4-3.
Now, how do you feel about this one? Tenacious Underdog also coming out of the bin. This one's going to gain haste. Like, Kelvandil's life total is not that high, right?
No, at this point, I mean, Wedding Announcement and Tenacious Underdog are proving that being able to get additional value over time. I mean, these are cards that don't do just one thing, and it's very important that your three drops and your 2 drops in the case of Underdog do a lot of things right now, and that's definitely what we're seeing here.
Now, this is all for naught. If, right? The if is very important. If Kelvandil just comes up with Goldspan Dragon, turns it sideways, and casts Show of Confidence, right? Where among other things, right? But they have to have it. Oh,
Yes.
crud.
Well, they're gonna big score discarding a mountain and digging. Man, they've been sitting on a mountain this whole time. That's brutal.
Yeah, but this isn't enough anymore, is it? Because in order to get the Goldspan Dragon down, they would have to attack, which means it would be past combat.
Right.
Are there cards in Kelvandil's deck to get them out of this?
Doesn't look like it.
Apparently
Yeah,
not.
they took a look at the 3 cards from Expressive Iteration, did not see what they were hoping for. And with that, we go on to game 2, and that is Snowman's game. And Snowman had a couple of very interesting draws there. So there was one play where Wandering Emperor came out. Kelvandil had the disdainful, I believe it was no Jawar Disruption for it. Perfect. Like clean response. And then Snowman just drew another one. You know, and we saw that with Wedding Announcement as well, where they were able to cast out a Wedding Announcement and then just draw another one, which is a beautiful position to be in. Because, you know, whenever you can play out a card, whenever you have 2 copies of a card and your opponent doesn't get to see them with like a Thoughtseize or Duress style effect, you have that beautiful feeling where you know your opponent is going, there's no way they could possibly have this. And you're just sitting back with it, just ready to go. It's a beautiful feeling. And in that game, Snowman had it. Whatever they needed, they had it. Which is interesting too, because Kelvandil had a ton of great responses to Snowman's early plays. You know, we saw a lot of, I mean, those Spike Field hazards shut down, early interaction. There was that key Jawar Disruption to prevent the Wandering Emperor from coming online. But at the end of the day, those Wedding Announcements just provided too much value.
Agreed. Now, how do you feel about these Tenacious Underdogs being in the sideboard now? Is it just that they're too slow and the paying the life is not ideal?
I think that's it. I think it's the life payment that's the main issue, because whenever you're going up against this Show of Confidence, Goldspan Dragon deck, you need to have you need to have some buffer there, because they can hit you. I mean, we've seen it, and unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to actually see the clip itself, but like I understand that earlier in this tournament, some of you can maybe watch, there was an attack for, I believe it was 24 in one turn. I mean, it can happen. Like, Show of Confidence with a Goldspan Dragon is an incredibly powerful combo, and it can go from nothing to undead, like in the blink of an eye. And so Snowman, I can appreciate wanting to preserve their life total, because if the combo fires, you need to have as much life as you possibly can to hopefully, just pray that they don't hit as many storm pieces as possible to get that number up to, wherever it has to be. Because if you've chipped your own life total down to 14 or 12 because of your Tenacious Underdogs, your opponent's going to have no problem dealing with that.
Yeah. Oh boy, I absolutely agree. Snowman submitting the good old-fashioned 61 card list says, I just cannot justify cutting any of these other cards here. They felt like it'd be too detrimental to their game plan. Ends up putting the Tenacious Underdogs back in and just says, you know what? I'm submitting at 61, and mad respect. Like,
absolutely,
stick to your guns. If this is your game plan, you do what you got to do. You add the cards you need, and you know what? It came out to 61. That's fine. I'm up a game, right? So
right, exactly. Any kind of statistical downside as a result of 61, okay, I can live with that. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, how do you feel about this hand, though? They had to take a mulligan. Snowman on the mulligan here. Tenacious Underdog coming off the top at least means there's a threat there. so far it had been entirely reactive. If you were sitting in Snowman's seat, as you so
As we are in a way, yeah, in a way.
yeah, efficaciously picked, would you be happy with this being all your aggression?
That's a great question. I wouldn't be. I don't know. I'm not over the moon about it. That's for sure. But I think I'm not. I'm not upset either. I can appreciate wanting to start with something, with a good offensive 2-drop and seeing what cards come. I can appreciate that. And drawing 2 lands, pretty darn good when your starting 7 only has 2 in it. So those were some good draws so far. It'll be interesting to see if they get any more aggressive action, like a wedding announcement or a Rafine here. That'd be very interesting.
So do you let them go to combat? Or do you kill this little shaman here?
The thing about the Fable and the Mirror Breaker that makes it such an excellent card is every single mode is great. And that 2/2 goblin is no exception. I think I might want to Infernal Grasp the goblin here before they declare attackers. Once they declare attackers, I've made my bed and I'm taking the 2. But
Yep.
yeah, I think I would want to rip this here. Because giving your opponent, I mean, the other option is let them have the mana and hold up Disdainful Stroke for whatever they use or whatever they cast with it. But that's probably not going to be a 4-drop. You're probably looking at a Goldspan Dragon on 5 that you really want to save that D-stroke for.
Yeah, exactly. And we already saw in game 1 the amount of protection they can muster for their own Goldspan. And as a matter of fact, we didn't even see it all. There are a number of other cards. They have Fading Hopes that they can point at your creatures or they can point at their own creature. They have the Dry Disruption, where they could potentially be countering your spells if you end up tapping down against it, which of course, I think Snowman's going to be too savvy to do here. But they've got the protection spells we saw, the Shijiri Shelter there. They've just got infinite ways of making things difficult on you. And then there's Leers to bring them all back from the graveyard. So just because they're gone doesn't mean you're done fighting with them, right? They come back. So a little bit scary here. And but I absolutely agree with Snowman's analysis, and that is just hold on. Don't allow them to get jumped too far out ahead by getting treasures on the board, and then just try and manage the threats as you can. I actually agree with this too. They're already on 4 mana, so if they want to tap out for a 5-drop now, sacrifice some treasure and stuff, well, we'll Disdainful Stroke or negate, or maybe even just Vanishing Verse, depending on what it is. And then exactly.
Yep.
Snowman and I on the same wavelength here, I think. Vanishing Verse, the Kiki Jiki, just to keep things from getting crazy, right?
Oh yeah, because things tend to get weird when Kiki Jiki is allowed to run rampant on a board.
That they do. That they do.
All right. So now they have the mana up to cycle the Rafine's Tower as well as cast out Negate or Disdainful Stroke. So pretty much whatever Kelvandil wants to cast out here is probably going to get countered. And that's not a bad position to be in, but at the same time, to your point earlier, Tenacious Underdog is the only pressure that you're applying. And so is it going to be enough? We'll see. But at this point, I mean, Kelvandil already has taken 9 from it. So it's clearly doing his job.
So let's just say Kelvandil presents big score. Do you counter it?
Ooh. I think I'd want to. I don't know if I actually do. And I'd probably want to hit it with a negate so that we can save up the Disdainful Stroke for, again, the Goldspan Dragon, which negate can't touch.
What about, removal for your Tenacious Underdog? Do you defend it?
I don't think so. Oh, but in this situation, yeah, this is a Windmill Slam Disdainful Stroke. No question. Just run it out. Yeah.
And you cycle with a Rafine's Tower?
I think so.
Yeah, I think I agree. Yeah, and so does Snowman.
Excellent.
Nice to be in good company.
Right, exactly. I love it when, great minds, as they say.
Yeah. Well, it's always nice when the players also see the correct line that I have obviously come up with ahead of time.
Of course, yeah. Throwing in careful study, yes, exactly.
Lolth making it to the battlefield. Gonna down tick, make a few menacing reaching spiders, and Tenacious Underdog keeps crashing in there, and Kelvandil, unwilling to do any trading, has dropped down to 8. That tells me Kelvandil has 6 cards in hand and a plan. Snowman's tapped out. Is this the turn? Do we get to watch Snowman die?
I mean, those spiders having reach is a huge deal here. But, I mean, if there's a Kazul's Fury in the mix, maybe. Like, we might see the fireworks here.
Now, oh boy.
Yeah, and this... the deck that Kelvin is playing is difficult. There's a lot of intricacies in how you sequence, as well as those unexpected windfalls and big scores. Sometimes you are kind of at the mercy of the top of your deck to see if you can continue chaining and upping the storm count for that show of confidence. So it'll be very interesting to see if they're successful. I mean, ultimately what they need to do is hit that land drop and get that Goldspan Dragon online as quickly as possible so that the treasures become more valuable. Or simply cast a Leer. That's a heck of a card.
That's a heck of a card, folks. And keep in mind, I also want to point out there are still 5 cards in hand, and we know their action. Kelvandil has been missing land drops here, right? This is a situation where Kelvandil has 5 action cards in hand that are ready, willing, and able to do things, right? Looks like they're willing to trade off their Shaman for one of the spiders, and a Lolth goes away with the Voltage Surge from the bin. It's also notable, folks, Snowman hanging on to a negate here. Lear has a very, very special line of text
that people often forget about, which is always fun. But yeah, it's a pretty important one.
It says spells can't be countered. That means you can't counter them. So if you were thinking, oh, I'm going to put Lear in my deck and then, counterspell all my opponent's stuff. Well, no, that's not going to work.
Not going to work.
But this negate is dead, and we know that. Now, Kelvandil is at 8, which is not very much. That is a very small number. Okay, they go for the double block and Hive the Eye Tyrant. How do you feel about that?
Given that both the Hive of the Eye Tyrant and the Spider token have menace, and the underdog can come back, I mean, removing the underdog is just buying you a little bit of time. So I think that was the correct block. I can agree with that. I mean, losing Kiki Jiki is a problem, but fortunately, Lear hasn't gone anywhere. That's really important. How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think the most problematic card for Kelvandil to handle is the Hive of the Eye Tyrant, right?
Yeah.
So I think that has to... No,
what are you doing? Okay, good. That red aura is around it. You know what that means? Yeah, that means it can't be countered.
That means you're about to embarrass yourself in front of people.
Yep.
I know. I've been there.
I've been there too. Yeah. Yeah, and it's what's kind of problematic too. But that Infernal Grasp off the top is fantastic. And if Kelvandil's sitting on a counter spell, well, sorry. Ouch. Wow. That was a fantastic game. Snowman bringing it home in the end.
Admittedly, when you get to the dance, the top 8, it's tough. Elimination rounds, it doesn't, it makes things difficult, because at anything can happen, a little bit of mana screw or something like that. Just set your whole tournament aside there. We're in this game now, right? And that's just the way that it happens sometimes. But
notably, though, they did get a game win. They did bring game 3. Anyway, yeah.
We made it, folks. We made it. We are now in the semis, or in the semifinals. Yeah,
semifinals.
And it looks like we are going to be knocking out a little bit of Esper. Why, you ask? Well, because they're both Esper, darn it. So one of these Espers is going home.
Yep. One of these Espers is going home, and one of these Espers is getting a chance to go to the big show, the finals. This is it. The winner of this match is going to have a shot at the champion, the champion status, the championship crown, if you will, of the day, which is always delightful. So it'll be interesting to see which one comes through. And so here we have Taraaasyk versus VCardarelli. Anyway, I apologize to everyone whose names I've butchered over the years.
I think it's Quarterfinals.
Cardarelli, thank you. That makes way more sense. So so here we have Cardarelli getting the Rafine out early, which is pretty great. Again, I have not stopped talking about this card since I started on commentary because it's just so format defining right now. And but Taraaasyk has one of their own.
Yeah, but Connive is so good. Specifically, Rafine is so good when you're on the play, when you're the one being able to be the aggressor. Getting the first attack in means they get to connive first with their mana untapped, which likely means they're going to be able to find, if they don't already have, in this case they already have, an answer for your Rafine, and their Rafine gets to stay. Ah, this card.
And then to a point you made earlier, they're getting a chance to connive, and because it doesn't cost them anything, they get the counter. Now, being able to follow that up with a wedding announcement is not bad, to be fair, but is it really what you want to see? I don't know. This is tough.
Yeah. Now, admittedly, Quarterfinals is having an opportunity to fix their hand, right? They get to draw and discard, sculpt the perfect hand. Does that mean putting counters on? Maybe. Does that mean discarding lands? Maybe. But they're finding the cards they want to cast. Taraaasyk has got like a bunch of cards you already want. You don't need to fix this hand. It's already really stinking good.
Mm-hmm.
They just need to figure out how to answer this Rafine. Well, okay, I guess that answers it. I was going to say, is it a situation where you go Luminarch, or do you wait until their end step, pop down a Wandering Emperor, make a dude, and then on your turn, because we all know Rafine's going to be tapped, you always tap Rafine.
Yeah, right.
Exile it once you can pay for the ward. In this case, it looks like Taraaasyk is like, I just want to get my own 1/1 counters onto the board. They want to be impacting the board in a power and toughness sort of way. Do you blame them, or would you have gone about it differently?
I think both of them are perfectly fine choices. You end up with a situation where, well, that Vanishing Verse actually means that I think this is the correct line, because hitting a 2-drop versus a 4-drop Planeswalker with a Vanishing Verse is a huge difference. So I think the Luminarch was the correct line there, knowing what we know now in hindsight. But at the time, it's really a question of, do you want to race and try to kind of go over the top, if you were like in arm wrestling almost, where you try to overpower your opponent? Is that what you're trying to do here? Or are you going to try to be a little more controlling with the Wandering Emperor? And they decided to go for not, they're trying to assert a board state, possibly because they have their own Rafine, and being able to connive 3 is pretty fantastic. Although now this does give you the opportunity to pay the ward and get rid of that Rafine on the opposite side.
So what's better? Having your own Rafine, fighting fire with fire, so to speak, or, removing a Rafine?
I think that's really tough. I mean, it looks to me like they're committing to the Wandering Emperor here, because if they wanted Rafine on the board, they would have played them out post-combat, or pre-combat rather. Yeah, that makes sense here. And also, I have been gushing about Rafine quite a bit, and I want to go ahead and pat myself, as well as our lovely host Hollywood Pizza, on the back a little bit. If you are not currently following the Pizza Box YouTube channel, I would request that you do so, because we put out a ton of fun content over there. And one of them, we did do a top 5 list when Streets of New Capenna dropped. And one of the cards that we had, I believe, like very high on the list, was Rafine, because it was done by myself, Hollywood Pizza, as well as Hearsay, who is one of the head admins behind the scene, who does a phenomenal job as well. All wonderful streamers in their own right. Give them all follows, of course. But that in that video, we did gush about Rafine quite a bit, and I gotta say, I think we got that one pretty. Actually, we had a lot of good hits in that video, so I would love it if you wouldn't mind checking that out.
For sure.
All right, self-promotion aside, so we have a situation where Taraaasyk has now kind of established dominance a little bit, because at the end of the day, Cardarelli was really leaning on Rafine. They really were, which is fine. You can go a long way leaning on Rafine. But the Wandering Emperor, turns out, still great. And a great answer for Rafine.
Ooh. Vanishing Verse off the top. So to me, this looks like a Rafine verse.
I think you're right.
And like, get into combat, do your Rafining, right? But like, then you can either target a blocker that's appropriate, or more likely just get that Wedding Festivity off the battlefield. Make it so there is no parity here. My creatures are just bigger than yours.
I like that.
Seems really strong here. Like, where do you put the counter? Do you give first strike to your Luminarch Aspirant?
I think so, because that's the one you really want to protect here. That's the ground force you're most worried about protecting. So
But
you can either give it the counter from, well, interestingly enough, here comes the Infernal Grasp.
oof.
That's good. Good answer there. Notably before attackers are declared.
Just the 3 power creatures getting in. Sans Luminarch Aspirant. Looks like a little blocks. No more blocks. Do you trade here? Or you go after that wedding festivity?
Ooh, that's a tough call, because getting rid of the Tenacious Underdog for good is really tempting. But at the same time, having another Wandering Emperor in hand means that you can do it that way. I probably would have gone after the wedding festivity there, to be honest.
Cashing in the Wandering Emperor, despite not having the mana to follow it up with another Wandering Emperor.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think they were probably hoping that the Luminarch Aspirant counter was going to the underdog before the Vanishing Verse.
Sure.
I mean, because getting rid of that little piece of value would have been nice. I can appreciate that. But since it didn't, they chose to hold the verse back. Makes sense. I can appreciate that.
So now what? 11 is not that much life.
No.
Do you... Well, I mean, apparently Taraaasyk doesn't, but would you have animated Hive of the Eye Tyrant and just said, forget Vanishing Verses, forget Wandering Emperors, I'm going to put my opponent to dead?
Yeah. Never mind any trickery. Let's just go for it. Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate that thought. Now, those blocks, I'm kind of surprised that Cardarelli went after the Vigilant Samurai rather than the Aspirant.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
I was going to say, this is absolutely Wandering Emperor take down, right? Because
Yeah.
you're always going to get rid of the Luminarch Aspirant, but they did now leave open the opportunity for putting a counter on to save the Tenacious Underdog, which is that's a swingy play for sure. Do you respond with your own Wandering Emperor just to get some more damage in?
That's
Give
a
first
really
strike as
good
well,
question.
maybe? Get that Tenacious Underdog into the bin either way?
Yeah, because this does, so Cardarelli's play does give the underdog advantage here with that first strike. And I think I probably would respond with Wandering Emperor to buff up the Samurai. That way they trade still.
I mean, they just call it back up from the bin next turn.
True, and that's not great. But then all of a sudden, the underdog can no longer block. It's just an attacker.
It's true. Which,
So, but it's an attacker that draws you cards.
yeah.
So, um,
And admittedly, I guess if they're taking 6 here, paying the 2 life means that would be taking 8 here down to 3 just to get the underdog back into combat. That's
ooh,
a steep ask.
yeah, that's risky for sure.
Taraaasyk definitely taking their time, trying to decide how to go about this. Sure enough, Wandering Emperor does make it from the hand. It is going to be first strike for first strike. It is going to do a little bit of just straight up damage right on your noggin from the Luminarch Aspirant and from one of the tokens. Wandering Emperor, very, very tempting to go down and get rid of the Luminarch Aspirant for good via exiling, gaining a couple life as well, going back up to 7. But just getting a Samurai, that's tempting, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the things that makes the Wandering Emperor such a good card is all 3 of those modes, like none of them are phenomenal, but all of them are pretty good and exactly what you need in certain situations. There's no dead mode on the Wandering Emperor at all. Like all 3 of those abilities are in play any game. All right, and so now that does remove the ability for Taraaasyk Wandering Emperor to exile. So that's notable. But the double underdogs coming out of Cardarelli's hand, I mean, all of a sudden that seven life total is looking a little cozier than it was a second ago. That's for sure.
Well, but Hive the Eye Tyrant can get a counter, right?
True. Yeah.
And then with Menace, oh boy, it looks like Taraaasyk and I are on the same wavelength here. With Menace, it's a 5/5. Now, admittedly, both Tenacious Underdogs can trade, but how much can you? Or is this a situation where you're just trying to trade both your Tenacious Underdog with the 2/3/3s there? I mean, you're going to be blocking, right? Like you die if you don't.
Right,
Right?
100%, no question. Yeah.
So I mean, obviously you don't trade with. Oh my goodness! Yeah, I was going to say,
Ooh.
since they wouldn't trade with the Hive of the Eye Tyrant here, they give the first strike to one of the tokens. Now, admittedly, yeah, wait, what?
Interesting.
Spicy.
All
Not
right,
presenting lethal.
that's a bold choice. So, well, actually, it is lethal if they choose not to. If they choose to go after the Hive, that is 7 damage to Cardarelli. So this is lethal on the Wandering Emperor. Period. The Emperor's gone.
That's true. Correct. But that's a bold choice because now they can keep one of the Tenacious Underdogs, right? Theoretically.
Yeah, theoretically.
Because the Wandering Emperor is going away and the blocks are set. Yeah, okay, interesting. Now, again, this is not ideal for Quarterfinals, but if they bring back another underdog, that's 9 power. Luminarch Aspirant's another counter is 10.
This is one short.
You have to. Yeah, there's no way, right? Because you have to attack with the Tenacious Underdog you brought back. You have to go with the Wandering Emperor, I guess, right?
I would imagine so because yeah, you need to get rid of that one counter and then keep 2
Then,
blockers. But you have the
yeah,
Hive, which has
yeah,
Menace. So
Taraaasyk has got to forget about Menace. Then,
right, yeah, exactly. They have to blank on that, and yeah,
so playing the land there wasn't a mistake, right?
yeah, holding back and threatening something. Well, that said, they do draw a card here. So, but if it's an Infernal Grasp, that's a dead card because you lose life off it.
Well, okay. Are there are Vanishing Verses over there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So that's something for sure.
If
Yeah,
that
they're
card
actually
is a
4
Vanishing
Vanishing
Verse, we have a
Verse.
game, for the
Yeah,
record.
100%.
Getting rid of the other Tenacious Underdog.
Naturally. And it's not.
No! Okay. All
Going
right.
down to the last moment, but they did not have it, unfortunately.
Good heavens. All right.
That was a game right there.
That was a game. I'm glad we got to be a part of it, honestly.
Absolutely.
Going over here to sideboard. How do you feel about this sideboard plan? Presumably, yeah, I was going to say, you want some of your more beefy, reaching, flying style creatures, right? Because Rafine is so nasty. So getting Leisha in here makes sense. Getting some Lolth in here makes sense. How do you feel about like Meathook Massacres and the like in this sort of matchup? When you know Rafine's going to have 45 toughness, right? Or
Right.
whatever, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah. No, I think Meathook in this matchup, and that's one of the things that makes the Esper deck so tough. Is I mean the toughness on the creatures just gets out of hand between Luminarch Aspirant, Rafine, and Wedding Announcement. Like everything is just going to be big. So getting Meathook Massacre is kind of reserved for really late in the game, and I don't know that it makes sense. Now Raven Female, on the other hand, the fact that it only costs 1. And if Rafine hasn't had an opportunity to connive directly on, if Rafine themselves has not had an opportunity to connive or get a counter from Luminarch Aspirant, Raven Fieldman's a phenomenal response because with it only costing 1, it makes the ward much more manageable and it gives the -4/-4 because Rafine is a white card. So I think Raven Fieldman makes a lot of sense coming in here.
Now, Taraaasyk making a concession to being on the draw here cuts a Rafine. We have gushed about that card. I take none of it back, right?
Right?
That's bonkers. But it's at its best. We mentioned this before in one of our other matchups there, that whoever has the first one is going to start getting value first, right? You're going to be able to start taking advantage of that early. Taraaasyk is saying here, I am on the draw. I don't expect to have the ability to capitalize on the conniving early and cuts one. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's a bold choice, but at the same time, I think they're probably right. I don't know that I would have done the same because, I'm with you. I stand by every great word that I said about Rafine, all day. And all the stuff I've recorded prior, to be honest. I think the card is absolutely phenomenal. But at the same time, I can appreciate where Tarask is coming from. The notion that while the card is great in my current situation, the chances of me, being able to take advantage, maybe not that great. Ooh, Spell Pierce on a wedding announcement. That's pretty fantastic.
And get to draw the card with Reckoner Bankbuster? Folks, okay, so I recognize maybe to non-Magic players, this might not look like a blowout, or a
But that
huge
really
swing.
was.
But that was what we would call in the game a tempo play, a huge tempo play where you're trying to seize back the tempo from your opponent and get more cards in your hand, get more resources going on. And they were able to do both of it by stymieing the wedding announcement, which was standing to impact the board in a meaningful way. And then also getting to draw more cards, get back up ahead on cards from where they were kind of languishing just a little bit. And oh my goodness, then sure enough, they have the negate.
And to be fair, Tarask telegraphed that Wandering Emperor pretty clearly with the Shattered Skyclave there.
Sure.
The Amiria's Call coming into play as the land. When you pay 3 life to make sure you have an untapped land, you have something to do with it.
Yes.
There's
If
no
it
question about
happens to
that.
be your second white source and your 4th mana,
Yeah, it's pretty
color me
clear what's going on
suspicious.
here.
But yes, I agree.
So Cardarelli, I think the moment that happened was like, well, this negate is staying up here. And they have another one. My goodness.
Ooh. And sure enough, Tarask here, believe it or not, folks, Tarask is playing a 3-color deck. Sitting on only 2 of those colors currently, but
Indeed.
has been able to really motivate a serious amount of offense. And has gotten Cardarelli down to 11. Ooh.
Wow. Infernal Grasp on the land. Yeah, Cardarelli is definitely in the control seat here, whereas Tarask is in the beatdown position. And I feel like both players have been doing a pretty good job of those roles. Where Tarask is
Now,
doing, has gotten Cardarelli down to 9, but at the end of the day, Cardarelli has stopped some major plays.
now, would you mind elaborating a little bit? What do you mean by the beatdown seat? What do you mean
Yeah,
by the control role?
so there is a I don't know if heuristic is the right word. There's kind of a school of thought, if you will, that in any game of Magic, one player is trying to survive where the other player is trying to win. And so that's kind of casually or kind of, is more often referred to as the person who's trying to win is trying to, and that's often represented by creatures attacking the life total and trying to lower the opponent's life total to 0, as we see all the time in Magic. And so that's kind of casually been referred to as the beatdown, the beatdown seat. And this has actually been popularized on an article. I don't remember the author's name off the top of my head, unfortunately, but the title was "Who's the Beatdown?" So there's this, and it proposed this idea that in any game of Magic, one person is trying to survive and impact the opponent's board in such a way that they can hang on until they can initiate their game plan. Before the game is over, they have to take on that beatdown role. And it does fluctuate throughout the course of the game. And sometimes it can fluctuate mid-turn, because of one big play. So, we saw with the Hullbreaker Hordes as a great example. Like, that's a card that turns you from the control player into the beatdown pretty fast, because all of a sudden you are able to prevent whatever your opponent's doing, and you have 7 power on the board. You're able to, deliver that killing blow. And so here we have a situation where Tarask has the underdog, has had the wedding, I don't believe they had a wedding announcement, but they had the Wandering Emperor in their hand at least, trying to get it on the board, where they were trying to mobilize aggressive threats. And Cardarelli turned the corner beautifully while I was talking there.
Yeah, exactly. And you illustrated the point perfectly. And again, for the folks maybe at home that were looking for that article themselves, it's a Mike Flores article.
Thank you.
And it just absolute masterpiece from literally 1999. I'm not making that up. It's over 20 years old, but it's a masterwork. And if you were looking to up your game, start there. Honestly, start there. It's a great place to start. And even if maybe you've been playing for a little while and you're just like, oh, I've never read that article, start there. It's a great article. And in that last game, right as the game was closing out there, if you were a new player, you'd look and say, well, darn it, Tarask had like, whatever, 15 or 16 life, and the other player had 9 life. Why would you ever concede?
Right.
Well, and it's because Taraaasyk recognized from this seat, I am currently the beatdown, and I can no longer win the game. And rather than try and struggle against it, they accepted their fate, scooped up their cards, right? Moved on to the next game. So once the controlling player has, we in in the business we would refer to it as turn the corner, and that is to say that you have swapped roles. You are no longer the beatdown. You are now the controlling player or whatever. Playing the controlling role requires a specific set of cards, either counter spells or kill spells, things like that. You've got to be able to manage what your opponent's about. The player on our side of the field here just didn't have any of those cards, and the roles had clearly swapped. I can no longer turn creatures sideways and reduce your life total to 0. That will never happen in this game. And since I can't sufficiently handle the threats you've presented on your side of the board, the game is essentially over. The life totals haven't reached 0, but it's just a matter of time. And again, Taraaasyk, in the interest of time and just saying, I've played enough games of Magic, I recognize this, scooped him up. And for the record, I think they made the right decision.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And in that situation, I mean, they were really dependent on that tenacious underdog to really carry them, and it was doing a great job there for a minute. But Cardarelli just had too many answers. Was able to strip Taraaasyk of resources early on, and then present their own threats at the appropriate time. It just they did a phenomenal job of turning the corner, becoming that beatdown player, and taking it over. And to illustrate that point, when you say that certain cards need to be present, it's not that those cards aren't in Taraaask's deck. Like, that's one of the nice things about mid-range is mid-range decks can actually function on both axes pretty comfortably. They can fill both roles in a way that most decks can't. And both of these players are playing mid-range decks. They're playing decks that have removal. They also have threats. That's kind of the classic definition of a mid-range deck. It's one that has both. Whereas your more common aggro deck wants to be the beatdown from start to finish all day. That's just what they came here to do. That's what they're going to do. Mono red goblins comes to mind. As if a mono red goblins player is in a position where they have to defend their life total, they're pretty scared because their cards aren't designed to do that. Whereas Nazori's control mage, for example, or Nazori's control deck, kind of a typical archetype that we've all seen from time and time. It comes and goes. It'll always be back. That is one that's comfortable being in the control seat because most of the cards in the deck are reactive in nature, with between 2, 5, maybe up to 8 cards in the deck being able to turn that corner and end the opponent. Depending on what style you're looking at from what time period. I know I've seen some where it's like one mascot exhibition in the sideboard and everything else is a sweeper. And that can win games. But anyway, that's the topic for another day. And here we have a Luminarch Aspirant versus a Rafine. So who can get more counters is really the question here.
Now, Taraaasyk had a very, very interesting decision to make there. Decided not to Vanishing Verse while Quarterfinals was tapped out. So they could have answered the Rafine last turn before they had a chance to connive or any of that. And they moved on to where the, counter spells could be relevant, right?
Well, actually, Rafine is not an eligible target for Vanishing Verse because it's multicolored.
Oh my gosh.
Or is there something? Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Rafine. In top of everything. Meanwhile, Luminarch Aspirant is a perfectly fine target for Vanishing Verse.
I've fallen prey to one of the classic blunders.
It's okay. No worries at all. And that's, again, of all the things that, if only Rafine had one other thing that we could gush about, the fact that it dodges Vanishing Verse as well. I mean, that card does it all.
It really does.
Now here, the Wandering Emperor could downtick. And I think you have to.
What if they have another one?
Well, then you'd be sad. I think that's the only response.
So do you Lulth draw a card first?
Well, but then you couldn't pay for the ward.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, downticking the Emperor here not only loses the Wandering Emperor, and there's a straight 1-for-1 trade, but there's also an opportunity cost in that you don't get Lulth this turn because you have to pay for the ward cost. So, I mean, that is a costly choice. So I don't know.
Yeah, because I guess you could get spiders, right?
Yeah.
You could even give spiders counters,
Raffine's
things
is
like that.
already to 5, so the spiders can't trade.
Yeah.
They can chump block and save the Emperor for a turn, so I mean that's something. That might actually be the correct line. Play out Lolth, make the spiders, uptick, give the samurai the token or the counter, chip in for 3 damage, and then your spiders can, maybe, protect the Emperor.
Yeah, rough.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen worse situations, that's for sure. But it is, I mean, at the end of the day, Raffine is going to get an opportunity to keep doing their thing.
All right. So pick a seat. Quarterelli's seat or Taraaasyk seat?
Um, both have a game under their belts. We've seen what Cardarelli can do with 4 cards in hand. I mean, at the end of the day, Taraaasyk has the 2 Planeswalkers online. And if Cardarelli had one other creature down, I think they would be in an optimal position here. Because they're relying on just Raffine, I'm actually thinking Taraaasyk has the advantage here, but it's not by much. Like, that's my thought. Yeah, how about you? What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, I think I agree. But boy, it depends on what those cards are in Cardarelli's hand. Like if we're looking at a pair of Vanishing Verses or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's one.
Ouch. Things get complicated in a hurry.
Yeah.
Now, do you agree with that decision? Deny them the card draw, recognizing that Raffine's going away. I mean, I guess if you've got another Raffine, no skin off your nose, right?
Right. That is a great question. It really depends on what's in Cardarelli's hand, whether that was a good play or not. Because yeah, they could have hit the Emperor for sure, and that would have saved Raffine.
Does that telegraph a second Raffine, or do you feel like it's not that important?
Hey, that's a good question. I think. Well, at this point, Cardarelli has to somehow win this game. I mean, Taraaasyk still has 20 health. And I'd imagine you activate the Bankbuster here just to get something. They don't have priority at the moment, but still, I think on the end step, that's the play. I mean, Cardarelli has to do something.
How about draw a card off Reckoner Bankbuster? Is that something?
That qualifies as something for the end of the turn. There is Meathook Massacre, I think, is probably their best hope. Meathook Massacre and an untapped land would be pretty
Would you
nice
keep
here.
those in the mirror?
Probably not, though. Yeah, that's the thing.
Because Raffine, just 25 million toughness. I
Yeah,
don't know.
exactly.
That's tough. Now,
but at the same time, there's no other board sweepers.
It's true. Oh.
Ooh.
Interesting.
Indeed.
How
There
do
was
you
almost
feel
no
about
hesitation.
this?
Taraaasyk almost slammed it, but there's a little bit of consideration there.
Where do you put the counter? I mean, we know Cardarelli's got interaction, because if Cardarelli doesn't have interaction, the game ends, and it doesn't matter where the counter goes. But
right.
Does it go on the spider? That makes it an even more attractive target.
What I think I would do here is I would probably put the counter on the samurai, and I would have the spider connive. Is probably how I would do it. But or the opposite way around. At the end of the day, you want to spread the counters out as much as possible, because if Cardarelli is sitting on single target removal, you want to still get in for as much damage as possible.
So here's my question, I guess, because you're going to be conniving too.
Mm-hmm.
Do you just try and make the samurai into an individually lethal threat? Ooh, because of Wandering Emperor.
Well, and notably, that samurai has vigilance.
It does.
And so the samurai conniving here, unless these are 2 lands, it's only connive 1 because there's only 1 attacking creature upon resolution. And Cardarelli notably gained the life there, so they did buy time beautifully.
Yeah, I agree with Taraaasyk here. I think having a better hand is more important here than getting a 1/1 counter.
Yeah, especially when that, as a result of that better hand, you can get a +1/+1 counter on Raffine at the end of the turn.
Do
Or
you?
no, I'm sorry. It's only no. We're not in alchemy. Don't mind me.
Yeah.
Sorry. So many versions of cards out there.
True. I'll give you that. I do. Is Luminar Casper at the play? Do you
Probably
commit
not.
more to the
At this,
board, just trying to go wide enough to say finish the game, or yeah, do you Vanishing Verse here?
yeah, I think Vanishing versus the Wandering Emperor before they can create a token makes sense. Like that's a good play.
Yeah, I think I agree with Taraaasyk here, just because I would be shocked if Quarterfinals did anything besides make a samurai. I think that is just a 2/2 for the most part. But if they do something else, it's because they have a better plan, right? And
Right.
I would like to not give them those options, I think. But opponent taps both white sources to draw a card. That can't be a good sign for Quarterfinals.
No, it's not looking good. Yeah, now's the time to play it and get that counter.
Yeah, oh, I agree with that.
100%. Yep.
So, do all the counters just go on Rafine because of the ward?
I think you make a solid argument for that.
And we know that the ward is going to make it, or it's also immune to Vanishing Verse, as you know, our casters have already very adeptly not punted to this game. So being immune to one of the most prevalent removal spells, and then also, you know, just generically being a strong card. Like, I don't know. I think I would like to make it the individually lethal threat.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Oh, but Infernal Grasp loses 2 life here, so it prevents getting hit for 4, but you lose 2. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to do it.
Unfortunately, yeah. That is it for Cardarelli. So Taraaasyk takes it down. The finals are underway. Oh, this is exciting.
Right. So, you never picked your seat.
Oh, that's true. I did not. I gotta say, I gotta root for Teamer. At the end of the day, the Esper midrange deck has proven to be just an absolute juggernaut, and the fact that this is not an Esper midrange mirror, I find kind of surprising. And I can't help but I can't help but find myself rooting for the underdog. I think Teamer is very interesting, and also any deck that has the sheer audacity to put 4 Titan of Industry in the main deck and actually make it to the finals of a tournament. I'm excited. I want to see this deck shine today. So I got to root for that. How about you? Where do you land on this one?
I agree. They also had the audacity to bring Galazeth Prismari rather than the 4th Goldspan Dragon. That's right, folks. 3 Goldspan Dragons, just 1 Galazeth Prismari in the main. So, you know, that's I have got to respect that kind of moxie. But since you picked them, I'm going to pick Esper midrange because I'm contrarian.
Fair enough.
So Taraaasyk is my dark horse running against your, you know, horse of the light or whatever. Teamer midrange, bringing the good old-fashioned spice. That said, we're well into the game, folks. Cecil McBee on the play here has had blue pathway, a red pathway, and a blue-red land all come down, following it up with a Fable Mirror Breaker to add a 2/2 that when it attacks, it creates treasure to the board. If you're in Taraaasyk, do you Vanishing Verse? The 2 snap it off.
Yeah, there's no question. Apparently, that was just the right answer. All right. Well, and knowing, this is an open deckless tournament, so knowing that the Teamer deck is clearly trying to ramp up with treasures, I mean, getting rid of the first treasure generator, okay. I mean, that's fair. That makes sense. In that situation, I may have gone after the Fable of the Mirror Breaker there in concern about the hand smoothing that it'll provide next turn. But at the end of the day, the Treasure Goblin was definitely a threat. So getting rid of that makes sense.
Agreed. Now, how do you feel about this? They go with the Kaito over the Rafine. Is that just a concession to the fact that you get Rafine's value whether it attacks or whether somebody else attacks?
I think that's exactly right, because with Kaito down, once Rafine hits the board next turn, assuming that Rafine hits the board next turn, because Cecil does have quite a few counter spells in that deck. Actually, let me see. Actually, in the main deck that we have Jawari Disruption. That's it. Actually, most of what I was looking at was Test of Talents, Disdainful Stroke in the sideboard. So I guess actually that's not. So in any case, what Taraaasyk is hoping for, I believe, is to stick Rafine this turn, have the Ninja Connive and attack for 2 potentially. So I
Be
think that was the
unblockable.
thought.
That's That's
Mhm.
huge here. The like a 1 power unblockable creature is, eh, yeah. It's
It's
a 20
okay.
turn clock. That's not that
Right.
exciting. But a 2/2 that's unblockable must be answered. Sooner rather than later, it becomes a problem, right?
Yeah.
So with Rafine being able to connive onto it every turn means it doesn't even have to stay a 2/2. It can become a 3/3 or a 4/4 or a 5/5. Hold on, like this is real deal in a hurry. That admittedly it is very susceptible to removal. You know, any number of cards will handle it, up to and including Prismari Command. So
Yep, there it is.
there we go. But Cecil, honestly, kind of just surrendering the point to us, right? They just say, no, casters, you're right. This card, despite only being half a card or less, just the Kaito's -2, must be answered, and it must be answered right now because of all those things we were talking about, not the least of which being Rafine's hand fixing. And they fire off removal spell on the spot.
Yeah, I think that was the correct thing to do there. That also powered down Kaito's ability by hitting it before attacks were declared, because then Kaito was a loot effect instead of just a straight draw card. But here we have Goldspan Dragon. That's a heck of a card. Ooh, and that puts Taraaasyk in a really tough position. Do you sacrifice the Rafine or the Kaito? Apparently that wasn't as tough a position as I thought. And they choose to let the Kaito go.
Interesting. Because, okay, and keep in mind, folks, Reflection of Kikijiki is a terrifying, terrifying magic card. It can make copies of any creature under your control. So next turn, unless Taraaasyk handles the Reflection of Kikijiki, Goldspan Dragon is going to have a partner, another Goldspan Dragon. They're going to be crashing in for 8, making 2 treasures, which each tap for 2. So the attack step will be worth 4 mana on top of 8 damage, which last I checked is a good chunk out of your total life total when you start at 20.
Absolutely. Well, and so here comes Wandering Emperor before the Goldspan Dragon untaps. It'll be interesting to see, does Cecil have a response to that? Doesn't look like it.
And Goldspan Dragon being targeted, is there a protection spell? Is there some kind of hexproof or something?
Let's see.
Looks like Fading Hope.
Fading Hope will do the job.
Fading Hope, more than free. It actually net gains a mana. That is admittedly spewed off, but yeah. Turns out targeting your Goldspan Dragon with 1-drop produces an extra mana. Would have guessed.
Crazy. Yeah, it's crazy how that works. Now let's see. So Cecil wants to hit their land drop this turn. It looks like maybe they don't have that. So they may not be able to cast the Goldspan Dragon and get a reflection copy right away, which would be pretty fantastic. But fortunately for all of us, this particular version of Kikijiki does require you to pay mana into it in order to get that copy.
It does.
Yeah, unlike the original Kikijiki, which had haste and didn't require mana to tap and create a copy. But yeah, that is not the case here.
Now, notably, folks, there are 3 Jwari Disruption to negate in the main, right? If you tap out for Meathug Massacre here and it gets countered, is that essentially the game?
I mean, very possibly.
So
I mean, the other option are to blitz it. You could blitz in the underdog and connive Rafine again and keep the beatdown going. Discarding an underdog to connive, nothing wrong with that.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm in the camp of you got to fire it off because you don't want to die. But like,
you're right.
This
if one of
feels
those
really bad.
if one of those counters comes out, this hurts really badly. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, so it happens.
Meathug sticks. And Rafine, because of that enormous toughness, survives with 2 toughness to spare.
Well, and notably, Rafine still has ward, right? So it's still kind of tough to target. And it has steadily grown into what is approaching a really nasty threat. 3 power, a 3/6 is manageable, but it's not likely to stay a 3/6 long term, right?
Oh, yeah. No, it's going to be growing past that pretty quickly here.
So, assuming, I don't know, you pull a land off the top or something if you're in Taraaasyk seat, do you just blitz the Tenacious Underdog, pop down a Luminarch Aspirant? Oh!
Okay, Fading Hope, targeting the Rafine. Getting rid of those 3 counters for good and returning Rafine to hand. That slows down Taraasyc's advance pretty significantly.
Interesting. And Rafine's Tower. You just make your land drop here, or do you save it to cycle? Oh,
yeah, I'd probably go with the land drop here as well.
Sure.
Yeah, because at this point they're only 1 land away from being able to blitz back both underdogs if they find their way to the graveyard.
Sure.
So that's, a full board out of nowhere basically, and that could be nice. We'll see.
Now, the problem is Cecil has been looking for lands for the whole game, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. Wow. Do you block
I probably would have put Rafine in front of that. Although Cecil did discard a Thundering Rebuke there, which if they were holding another one or another burn spell akin to a Thundering Rebuke there, that actually could have taken care of Rafine very comfortably. So I can appreciate sitting on 22 life. I can afford to take 2 here. That's okay.
Only 1 Thundering Rebuke in the list, though there is a burn down the house.
Oh, burn on the house. But burn on the house does the job regardless.
Oh,
but the Battle Frost and Fire. Ooh.
All right. Well, Taraaasyk with the sick reads.
Yep, sniffing it out.
Tenacious Underdog forces you to pay life, but not a big deal. Rafine going to connive X. X equals 2. Do you just discard the lands here?
Yeah, probably.
Just fix your hand.
Yeah, I mean, you can make an argument for discarding the underdog, but I think dropping both lands makes sense here. And then playing out the underdog.
Yeah.
Or even holding it. That's, yeah.
This is okay. I think I can get behind this because at the end of the turn, if nothing happens, right, you can cycle away the Rafine's Tower or Vanishing Burst, right? Either one's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, drawing into a second Vanishing Burst, that's pretty great.
And notably, folks, remember we were talking about, Cecil just needs to deploy their threats because they have these gigantic things. Well, the time is now. You're at 7. You got to start deploying those nasty things. Now, admittedly, Titan of Industry does have reach. So Rafine is awesome. We've expounded at length and all that stuff. But, 7/7 reach, that will check it pretty well, I think, provided you can get around these Vanishing Verses. So, well, okay.
There it is. And also, Cecil was able to scry 3 because of the Battle Frost and Fire, and they did choose to leave 1 on top. So whatever that top card is, they like it.
All right. What are your options here? Create a 4/4. I think that's kind of right. Is it just life? Do you just say I want to live in the game longer and?
Yeah, I agree with this choice. Blowing up the Meathawk Massacre and gaining 5 life.
Not making a 4/4.
Yeah.
Against the Tenacious Underdogs and stuff.
True.
I don't know. To me, that's the one thing that I wanted was the 4/4. Just say your Tenacious Underdogs are meaningless the rest of the game. Is like that was the one that I took for granted. Admittedly, that's a fine choice to make, and I can appreciate your stance on that. But man.
Yeah. No, you're right. And that Vanishing Verse hurts especially because of that. Because if Cecil had gotten an opportunity to untap with the Reflection of Kiki Jiki and a Titan of Industry.
Yeah, that's kind of GG.
That's right? Yes, GG's exactly. Like that's so powerful. And Amiria's Call, fortunately, as far as the connive mechanic is concerned, not a land, despite the fact that it can be a land.
And Taraaasyk saying, I want to try and end this game with this Amiria's Call. I'm not sure I would have been in the same spot. I think I might have been like, let's take the conservative route and, you know, discard the Amaria's Call or whatever. But Taraaasyk says, no, I smell blood in the water. Next turn, we're giving our stuff indestructible. We're swinging out. We're going to make life difficult on Cecil. And in fairness, it's strongly possible that Taraaasyk just has the better line there.
Yeah, very possible. Well, and this is the kind of thing, this is part of the reason why I love top 8 Magic in these tournaments. This is the finals, and we've seen a lot of phenomenal back and forth between two excellent players playing two very different decks. And this is all game 1. I adore that. And okay, so this is going to give the Battle Frost and Fire trigger. So you do get an opportunity to draw 2 cards, then discard 1. And this is going to I believe the mode they selected was the Devils, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because the damage would have been, unless they had something to follow it up with only 1 mana. I can't imagine what that would be.
Yeah. Huh. Well, and yeah, because they, I guess with the land drop, they could have had Voltage Surge or something, right?
Right, yeah.
But either way, none of those things happen. It's the dudes, so fine. Of course, again, you might be questioning, well, why would you do that? Well, it's because Cecil recognizes I am way behind here.
Mm-hmm.
We need to get these cards drawn. We need to get deeper into the deck, find our answers, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Using the Infernal Grasp on the one of the 1/1s, that is, I mean,
It's an interesting choice when you're ahead on cards to spend. Well, actually, this.
yeah, that
Yeah,
makes it
no, that makes
lethal.
perfect sense. Yep, that makes a lethal
Yep.
attack. That's brilliant. You have
Yep.
to spend 2 cards to do it, but it's spending 2 cards to win the game. I'll do that
Yep.
all day. Yep.
Agonizing over which card to discard as you run your victory lap. But
Right.
all right. So Taraaasyk able to bring home game 1. As I mentioned earlier, I never had any doubts. Of course, my good friend Graham here, on the wrong side
Indeed.
of the predictions, but
Sometimes you got to take the L. It's okay. These things happen. That was just game 1. Anything can happen going into game 2. Notably, Cecil there really has. So one of the things about this teamer list is the mana values are just heavy. They're just really, really big. The cards that you're trying to cast out are freaking huge. When the cards that you're trying to cast out are freaking huge, when you get stuck on 4 lands or 5 lands without being able to hit those additional land drops, and without being able to have treasure generators stay on the board for very long, you end up in a situation where I have no doubt for the majority of that game, Cecil was just looking at that Titan of Industry in their hand, going, "Come on, why are you not on the battlefield yet?"
yeah.
Because they just didn't have the resources to deploy those threats, which is why you don't see Titan of Industry as often as you do other cards. And you mentioned that, yeah, in a head-to-head match, 1v1, Titan of Industry can take down a Rafine in most situations, but it's the difference between a 7 drop and a 3 drop.
Yeah. It's true.
It's a big
And
difference. Yeah.
then we go into sideboarding here, and if you blink, you missed it, folks. But Taraaasyk pulling out some of the most powerful cards in their deck. Why would you ever pull out Lolth? Why would you ever pull out whatever the Elspeths and the Sorens and things like that? Well, because just like Graham was talking about earlier, folks, Taraaasyk recognizes if I'm going to win this match, it's going to mean I am on the beatdown early and often. And I'm not going to have time to be casting 5 mana lulls. If it gets to 5 mana lulls, I'm in trouble. I need to be able to do things on, 2 mana and 3 mana and really get this game over with quickly. So they're pulling those cards out of their deck saying on turn 5, I don't want to be casting Lulth. I want to be casting a 2 drop and a 3 drop instead of just one 5 drop or whatever, right? So one of those, again, folks, one of those things about the game theory, you ought to go read that article we were talking about earlier, because it really will help you understand a lot of these matchups more fundamentally and help you understand why and how. And once you understand the why, a lot of the time the how gets easy because, well, you just try to accomplish this goal. If you don't know you need to accomplish this goal, you don't know how to get there because you don't know that this is what you're trying to accomplish. So in this case, Taraaasyk has a very clear goal. I need to win the game by whatever turn, turn 6 or something. If it hasn't ended by like turn 6 or turn 7, things start getting dicey, and they then structure their deck to do that thing, right?
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And that's one of the interesting things about sideboarding, especially when you're sideboarding with a mid-range deck, because you can transform it or really lean into one aspect or the other. And I think leaning into more the aggro side, it makes sense in this matchup because Cecil is going to be trying to implement a late game plan. The Fable of the Mirror Breaker, yes, it produces a 2/2 that can threaten your life total early, but the main reason that you want that first chapter of the Fable of the Mirror Breaker in this deck is because of the treasure. You're trying to ramp. That's really what you need to do because you're trying to ramp up into a Titan. You want to hit those 7 drops. And the sooner you can get there, the better. And so anything that can produce an additional treasure each turn is a big deal. So in that first game, we did see very early on Taraaasyk just using, I believe it was a Vanishing Verse to just knock out the treasure goblin immediately. And it made sense. And doing something like that here would make a lot of sense as well. An Expressive Iteration, not hitting a land. But that is a Dragon's Fire that can deal with the Luminarch Aspirant.
And it
Nothing wrong
handles
with
it quite
that.
nicely too, but except for the fact that Taraaasyk is holding a 1-mana counterspell, folks. Spell Pierce. You hold on to it late, feels bad. You fire it off early, feels real good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One, how do you feel about Spell Pierce being reprinted in Kamigawa?
Honestly, as much as I hate facing it, it's about time. Honestly.
Okay. That's fair.
I'm most of my decks don't end up running counter magic very often. I like doing mid-rangey things, but in general, I want to assemble crazy contraptions and do silly things that often don't have space for good cards like counter spells and things. But I think Spell Pierce is a really important tool for making sure tempo can exist. And I think tempo being in any given standard meta is very, very important. Now, when it gets to the extreme, like mono blue tempo was for a little bit, things like that, well, that's a little bit tough,
Yeah, not ideal for sure.
But like, I do think it should, in general, exist in most metas, at least to a certain extent, because then creature decks get precedent over nonsense. And again, I am not among the people who think planeswalkers were a mistake or any of that sort of thing. I like planeswalker style things like that, but I also think there should be punishment for that. In the same way that I think there should be punishment if you want to play 25 lands. Like, okay, well, I want to be able to destroy your lands, things like that. While I've been flapping my gums, Luminarch Aspirant goes away, doesn't get countered. Then Taraaasyk tries to follow it up with the Wandering Emperor, and it does get countered. So now Taraaasyk,
yeah, on a little bit of the back foot here. And meanwhile, Cecil has a fully deployed Fable of the Mirror Breaker with the 2/2 Shaman as well as the Reflection of Kiki-Jiki, the 2/2 Shaman having created 2 treasure tokens. I mean, that's exactly where Cecil wants to be right now.
Yep.
And now, I'm no mathematician, but I can count to 7.
Yeah.
Or 8 as it stands. Yeah, I was looking at Cecil's mana, and that looked like if there's a Titan of Industry in hand, we might see it come out here. And instead, they opt for the Goldspan Dragon, which is going to be hit by a Disdainful Stroke, which Taraaasyk did leave up, rightfully so.
What is the final card in Cecil's hand?
It's a great question.
Now, Reflection of Kiki-Jiki can just make a copy of the 2/2, crash in, get some treasure, right? Kind of nice.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Or they could wait until the end step on Taraaasy's turn and kind of try and stack those up and have multiple of those happening all at once, right? Definitely the sort of thing that makes things intricate, right? There's, looks like they go for the Goblin Shaman, charges in, makes more treasures. There are 4 treasures now on the battlefield. No Goldspan Dragons. They just tap for the conventional one.
And yeah, actually, and we do have the good fortune of being able we actually are able to take a peek at Cecil's hand, and we're actually seeing it deployed here. It is a Fading Hope. That last card was a Fading Hope.
Wow. All right, so Cecil wants the Fable of Mirror back in hand so that they can cast it back out, start getting all this additional value.
But there's that negate.
With the negate coming in clutch. And now suddenly, holy cow, we're in a top deck war of sorts. Cecil's got to have the better top decks in general just because they have bigger threats. But Taraaasyk does have 2 wedding announcements that we know about. Of course, deploys the single. Haven't seen the other one just yet, but very, very scary. What was Cecil's top deck there?
Cecil's top deck there was a Spikefield Hazard.
Well, that's going to come in handy because Taraaasyk just pulled a Luminarch Aspirant off the top.
Oh, yeah, that Spikefield is exactly what Cecil wants to see here.
So let me ask, Graham.
Yeah.
Did you use Spikefield Hazard on Luminarch Aspirant?
Oh, 100%. All day, no question. Yes. Oh, man. It's such a... There are certain targets. I mean, there are certain cards where if they are popular in the meta, red decks ought to run Spikefield Hazard. Luminarch Aspirant is absolutely up there as one of the like key pieces. The other one that immediately comes to mind is Magda the Brazen Outlaw. If people are running Magda, you run Spikefield. It's just a perfect answer.
Or Thalia.
Thalia is another good one. Absolutely.
Get that thing out of here.
100%. Yeah. Well, and unfortunately, so reporting in from Cecil's hand, that is a mountain that they drew. So Taraaasyk definitely has the advantage here.
Taraaasyk then picked up a Clearwater Pathway.
Oh no.
But as we talked about divinations used to back in my day, you know, Taraaasyk plays their Clearwater Pathway and draws 2 anyway because Wedding Festivities is silly.
And it sure is. All right.
Then picks up another Wedding Announcement and a Vanishing Verse.
Yeah, and Cecil is going to rip a Flame Blessed Bolt here to get rid of one of those tokens. And they are going to be very sad that they don't still have that Fading Hope right now. That, yeah, that would have a lot of nice targets.
Yeah. Now, again, with Vanishing Verse in hand here, Taraaasyk, yeah, I was going to say, very well may point it at the 2/2 just to save the life. Because don't forget, folks, Taraaasyk wants to be the beatdown and has been trying to arrange a situation for them to arrange themselves into the beatdown. But Cecil just has not surrendered that seat and has been beating down and gotten Taraaasyk all the way down to 5. I have to feel like Taraaasyk is in a situation where they have now successfully turned the corner, at least to a certain extent. That doesn't mean they're safe because Cecil has, what's the name of that card? Oh, yeah, Goldspan Dragon. That's a strong Magic card, though.
It sure is. But here we have another situation where the wedding announcements or the wedding festivities, they don't seem to, apparently people, you know, this is the marriage season, if you will. There are quite a few of these happening at once. Cecil did just draw a nice card, but I don't know that it's quite nice enough here. They actually picked up a Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So I think the main benefit there is that chapter 2.
Yeah, agreed. Fixing their draws, getting rid of that mountain. Now, over here, they picked up a land, Deserted Beach, and you guessed it. The Emperor Who Wanders, going to create a 4/4 Vigilance. Why is it a 4/4, you might ask? Well, because Wedding Festivities. Glorious Anthems back in my day used to cost white 1, not white 2, all right? And oh my goodness. Off the top comes Kaito Shizuki.
Holy cow.
And the hits just keep coming. Gonna draw a card. Oh my goodness, it's Obscura Interceptor, the 1 of and a 75.
Oh.
That means it's it, right? That's the game?
It's got to be. Well, and the reason for my reaction there is because Obscura Interceptor has the ability, and they drew another mountain here. So again, fortunately, they're able to just discard both of these. Or not another mountain, I'm sorry, another land. If it wasn't for that Obscura Interceptor, Cecil would be able to pull this off because they just grabbed a Burn Down the House, which is a great answer. Fortunately, Kaito's phased out, but that's okay. Because it would hit everything on the board. Unfortunately, the Obscura Interceptor has the ability to bounce it back to their hand and to no effect. So that's a problem. And, all the while putting a potentially 4-power lifelinker on the board to boot. So it's pretty darn good. The Obscura Interceptor is another one of those cards that does good work.
Yeah, oh boy. Back in my day, you know, I had Venser and I liked it. But Obscure Interceptor, better combat stats with lifelink. They just let it happen. Why, you might ask? Well,
Wow.
because this particular counterspell also attacks for lethal next turn.
Indeed. So let's see, they'll have their moment, but
Yep.
just not enough. Yep.
They will go ahead and take the tournament down. My dark horse coming in victorious against Graham's light horse, I might add.
That Esper deck can definitely beat down and grind as well, huh? Congratulations to Taraaasyk for bringing it home with that Esper mid-range deck. And I do want to give a special thank you to JohnLikesGames and Hamhocks42 with the fantastic top 8 coverage as well. And you, the viewer, for making it this far into the video. If you enjoyed it, like it, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. There's going to be tons of links in the description down below. Definitely check them out, including deck lists to this event and deck lists to all the commentators as well. And I hope that you stay cheesy.